Hello and welcome. I am Michelle West with Chamber Speak. I am here to help my good friend and client, Ed Berzminski, President of Chamber Marketing Partners, with the technical side of this webinar. Before I hand it off to Ed, I do want to let you know that we are so glad you're here and that you're in really for a great session, information-packed session full of chamber industry, best practices, and tips to help you improve your print publications. We do welcome questions. Ed will answer questions at the end, but you may ask your question at any time during the webinar by clicking on the Q&A tab at the right side of your screen and typing in the question in the Ask a Question field at the bottom right of that section of your screen. So without further delay, let me go ahead and hand it off to today's host, Ed Berzminski.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you all for joining Print Isn't Dead if you do it right. Tips for delivering more value and generating more revenue with your chamber publications. So what are you going to get out of this webinar today? We're going to help you define the point of your publications, and we're going to try to help you break out of your rut. And we're going to help you answer 3 of the most critical questions that we feel are important before embarking on any type of publication project. What do you want to say? Who do you want to say it to? And how is it going to get there? If you don't take anything else away from this webinar, please write down those 3 questions, ask them of your key stakeholders, ask them of your team members, go through this iterative process every time you put a publication together, because it will help craft your message and craft a better publication each time you put it together. So who am I? I'm Ed Berzminski, and I'm President and CEO of Chamber Marketing Partners. And I produced my very first Chamber of Commerce business directory as a turnkey publisher way back in 1993. So I may be in this industry longer than some of you have actually been alive. Now, question for you. Are you still posting PDFs online? If you stay to the end of this webinar, we're going to give you the name of a very valuable free service where you can take your PDFs, post them onto this free service, and within minutes have a flipbook ready to be linked to your website and anywhere that you want, actually. But stay till the end and we'll share that information for you. So is print dead? Well, it's not, but if you're in the daily newspaper industry, then you're definitely having challenges. The Pew Center for Research has pulled together information about daily newspaper circulation. And you can see from this graph that from the 1940s up through the 1970s, newspaper circulation was growing, it flattened out, and it's been declining. So it's kind of getting down to the levels of the 1950s. Now, recently, the Western Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, the WACE, had their 2018 conference in Las Vegas, and I had the pleasure of attending. And I also had the pleasure of reading a newspaper that was delivered to my door in my room. So I sat down with a cup of coffee, and I was looking and reading through the newspaper, which was a nice experience. But actually, the information that I was reading was not new to me, because earlier that morning I had already looked at that stuff on my mobile apps. So I consume my daily news from mobile apps and occasionally from TV if I have time in the morning. So the daily newspaper industry is definitely facing some challenges, but in the chamber world, print is still very strong. Back in July of 2017, again, the WACE conducted an opinion poll, and their research showed that 45% of chambers are still producing a printed magazine. And if you look down lower on this chart, 72% are still producing a printed membership directory, and 73% are producing a city map, a printed map. And that's kind of counterintuitive, since we have GPS all over the place on every single one of our mobile devices. But you know, it's not necessarily counterintuitive, because if you've ever been stuck on your phone, with your phone in a place where you don't have cell service, you're following a blue dot on a blank background, because the map needs to load through cell service. So you got a blue dot. You don't know where you're going. There's a lot more reasons for having a printed map, but they're still pretty popular. Now, in other areas, J.C. Penney actually several years ago announced that they were bringing back their printed catalog because their studies show that the printed catalog helps drive more online sales. Now, here's a brick and mortar retailer that tried to go the digital route, and they brought it back. Now, if you look at the first sentence, the first paragraph, after more than 5 years away and at a significantly smaller weight, the catalog is back. It used to be 1,000 pages, so they've made it smaller. But still, it's interesting that a company that large was bringing back print. So that Christmas, what was I starting to get? Williams-Sonoma catalogs and all these other catalogs that we used to get. Now, here's something that's really interesting. An online company, Airbnb, last year, they came out with a printed magazine. Airbnb, a digital online company, is producing a printed magazine. So they're going from new tech to old tech because they're realizing they need to reach people in multiple different ways. And I just saw the magazine at my, it's a higher end grocery store that occasionally I go to, but they were there on the racks. It's a really, really cool book. So now chamber directories used to be the be all and end all. They were the hottest game in town. You used to have yellow pages and people would get listed in the yellow pages and buy ads, but a chamber directory that was really narrow and that was focused on a particular town. So it was hyper local for its day. The challenges were that the distribution was very limited. Publishers would typically print very, very few copies. You'd be lucky if you got 1,000. You were really styling if you got 2,000 copies. It was generally enough just to get to the members. And they were very, very heavily focused on the directory listings. You'd have an alpha list, a full alpha listing of the company, a categorical listing. Often there'd be a who's who in the directory as well. And they were so thick, you could probably kill somebody with them. But the good news is in recent years, these publications have been evolving. They've been growing into being much more of a niche targeted publication that's more like a community guide. That's a relocation guide. That's an economic profile. It could be a destination guide, a visitor's guide. Sometimes they're annual magazines. They've been called multiple different things, but it really kind of depends on what the importance is for that community and what message they want to get out and who they want to reach. So the names of these publications change. Now, more often than not, all these publications do have a business directory component. It's really important to keep that business directory component inside these publications because you want to give your members the visibility and exposure. They're really not called membership directories anymore in that part of the book. They're called business directories so that a user who's from out of town can look at it and see what they perceive to be a comprehensive list of products and services that are in that particular community. So now I say with all these publications evolving, there are always exceptions. As a matter of fact, I just looked at the Tulsa, Oklahoma Chamber's website, and they have a big printed membership directory online as a PDF. And I know that several other chambers also still produce a printed membership directory that's just all about the members. So it really all kind of depends, but overall, this is the direction that these publications have been heading. They really have to tell a story now. It's not just about here's the chamber committees, here's what we do, blah, 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 blah. It's reaching out to an audience and answering the question for them, why do I want to move my business there? Why should I live there? What's my family gonna get if I bring them all there? What about my kids? What kind of education are my kids gonna get? So there's really more messaging that is involved in these publications these days than just talking about the chamber. You got to tell the chamber story, but you got to tell a bigger story as well. There's a story of overall vitality of the community. What are the economic opportunities for me, for my family, for my spouse when we move into town? So what about workforce development? If I'm a business that's looking to move into town, are businesses working together with schools to create a talented labor pool when I get there? I don't want to be drawing people from outside the community. That's not good for me and my business. I want to know that there are going to be good qualified candidates when I get there. What kind of community involvement is there? What kind of nonprofits? What kind of nonprofits do local businesses support? You know, what's the sense of community? What's the overall quality of life? So there's that broader message that needs to be told. And again, the chamber story needs to be told. Chambers are not very good at tooting their own horns, but these annual publications that reach beyond the membership and that talk to the membership are a great way to showcase what the chamber's leadership is doing to drive economic vitality in that particular community. Stories can be told about the chamber supported this, which led to the adoption of that, which brought this many business or jobs to the community, which contributed X number of dollars into the local economy. Those kinds of success stories are ways to tell the chamber story without having the chamber seem like they're saying, hey, we're the chamber, we're really great. Yeah, nobody really cares. But when you talk about it from the perspective of this is what we are doing, and this is what your membership is paying for, that's a very strong message. Maybe some of your investor level members are philanthropic. This is a great way to talk about the nonprofits that your investor level members are supporting. And it's a way to get them to pay for that through advertorials where they can talk about it. That's a revenue generating item. And then there are member success stories, what some of your member businesses are doing, why they've grown up in your particular community, why they moved to your particular community, and what makes them stay. And more importantly, how has their membership in the chamber provided value to their business? These publications connect with a broader audience. They're reaching beyond just the members. They're the highest quality snapshot of your community that you have. They're bolstering the chamber's reputation by telling those success stories. It's a strong leave behind piece for economic development. If you're out there talking to a business that's from out of town, what better way to leave them with a memory of that conversation than with a nice piece that talks about their community and talks about all the things that we mentioned earlier. They're also becoming more innovative. As an example, in the business directory section, listing disadvantaged businesses. Now, let me explain that. So I recently learned that, at least in California, public utilities commissions and large insurance companies, they don't allow their employees to reach out onto the public internet. They're keeping them behind firewalls because they want to protect, their technology. They don't want to get a Trojan horse or whatnot. So those employees, when they're looking for people, they actually do turn to printed business directories. Now in California, those large companies need to report their spend in different categories, in accounting, in marketing, in advertising, through to disadvantaged businesses. I've seen a spreadsheet from one of these companies. It's a huge amount of accounting work, but it's important for them to be able to identify it because the state requires it. I'm not sure about the feds, but I do know about the state. So wouldn't it be fantastic if in your member database, you could tag businesses as minority-owned, woman-owned, veteran-owned, or LGBTQE, LGBT enterprises, business enterprises, and have that information sent over to your publisher, if you're doing it yourself, to your graphic designer, and identify those businesses in the back of the book, in the listing section, with maybe a little flag or a tag. So those larger companies have a resource to go to when they're looking for those businesses. It would be a value add for the chamber. It'd be definitely a value add for those disadvantaged business members because the chamber is promoting them. So that's one way that these chamber publications can be innovative as well. Now, they also have to have a very strong digital partner. The flipbooks, the social media tie-ins, those are all really, really important because just doing something in print, that is kind of a dinosaur. You've got to have multiple channels, like taking bits and pieces of the publication, pushing it out through social media, tying it back to the online flipbook, and getting that more visible. Gives you more numbers, gives you more visibility, and it's very, very helpful. Don't worry, this webinar isn't going to be all just these PowerPoints. We're going to get to some actual examples. So what's the point of your publication? Is it, well, we've always done a directory, so we're going to keep doing it again this year. We're under a contract with our existing publisher. We got 2 more that we got to do, but it's just so-so. Oh, the board likes it, so we're just going to keep doing it. Well, maybe the board's 100 years old. Maybe collectively they're 1,000 years old, and they're stuck in the dark ages. Maybe people say, well, our members use it religiously. Well, really? Do they? Have we asked them? Or maybe the board says, hey, we're going to go all digital because it's 2018 and print is dead. Well, I've seen boards make those kinds of decisions in a vacuum and they don't ask the members. They're just saying this is what, but if your business director or your publication is generating 30, 40, 50, $60,000 of ad sales or more, your members, those advertisers are voting with their checkbooks. They like that distribution channel. They like that marketing channel. They are probably open to others, but why take away a valuable member tool without asking them and asking for their input? So here, again, print is not dead. It just needs to continue to be tailored. So again, the 3 questions that you need to ask: what do we want to say? Who do we want to say it to? And how are we going to get it there? So asking those 3 questions will really help figure out what the direction of your publication is going to be. You can say all the information in a feature article, telling your story. What do people want to know? We have one chamber client that has at the front desk, people are coming through all the time asking all kinds of questions, but those questions are really repetitive. So an article in that publication was answering all the questions that people have. Another good feature article is why, plug in name of your city, why Santa Monica, why San Antonio, why Des Moines. And there you can go through and talk about why your city is attracting business or why it's attracting people, why it is attractive. What's the chamber's vision? If there's a new CEO that's coming in or has come in recently, what a great way to get that CEO's message and vision out than doing an article on the CEO's vision for the chamber. And a lot of chamber publications talk about these are our committees, these are the things we do. Yeah, those are great, but it's really better to read it in an article form where somebody can say, I get it. What are some of the golden nuggets that make your community special? Images are also very important. They tell a very, very, very strong story. Diversity, unity, economic vitality, opportunities, the quality of life that's available, the humanity, people connecting people. It warms the publication when you have people. So now we're going to get into a few examples of what and who examples. What is the point and who is it trying to reach? These 5 different chambers put out 5 different publications. Bulverde Spring Branch, Texas puts out a community guide. Plano, Texas has a relocation guide. Hollywood is a combination community and economic profile. San Benito County in California is a visitors area. And Riverside, California covers all of those areas. It's a very, very unique publication. So let's start with Bulverde Spring Branch. Bulverde Spring Branch is a chamber of about 350 to 400 members, and it's 20 miles north of San Antonio. It's a former farming community, so it's very rural, but the farmers have been selling off and developers are building like crazy. It's 20 miles north of San Antonio, and this chamber is trying to reach out to affluent professionals who are working down in San Antonio, saying, look, imagine raising a family in a really serene lifestyle in an upscale home, and you're only 20 miles away from work. It's only a half hour. You can go home, live a serene lifestyle. And it actually is very pretty up there. I've been there. It's gorgeous with the houses that are being built. Here's an example of the table of contents. One of the first articles is it's a modern oasis. The next one is it's a good life, Bulverde Spring Branch style. And some other articles about things that are going on in the community, things that are available. If you look at that ad to the right of that table of contents, ranch living isn't for everyone. Therein lies our attraction. It's a very serene place to be and a very upscale place to be. Pictures are telling a story, a modern oasis. Now in South Texas, this is an attractive scene. Not for everybody, but there's a certain type of clientele that would be looking for this. The secret is out. The hidden truth about Bulverde and Spring Branch has been discovered, and we couldn't be more pleased. Here's another perfect serene image. You've got this idyllic countryside, and look at all those homes in the back. Those are brand new homes. The most expensive are $550,000 to $600,000, and they're gorgeous. This article talks about the healthy community and a strong community, people together doing a run, they're showing the health, they're showing the vitality. Speaking of vitality, it's important to have. It's great to list demographic information. It's even better to list it in pictures, pictorials. These work very, very well. Learning. Look at these pictures. You've got different kinds of kids learning all kinds of different stuff. You've got agricultural music, you got sports, you got all kinds of stuff going on. These are and look, this article was written by Michelle West, our engineer today. These kinds of things are important when you're talking about quality of life. A map is really important to have in your publication. This kind of shows you where Bulverde is relative to San Antonio versus the county. So it's not that far away, according to this. Now, moving on, we have community resources, and of course, you have to have that business directory component. Very, very important to have. Our next city that we're going to look at is Plano, Texas. Plano is in Northeast Dallas Metroplex. There's a lot happening in Plano. This chamber is about an 800 member. I think it might be actually reaching 900 members at this point. They have all kinds of big corporates that are moving into the area. Toyota is moving their corporate offices from Torrance, California and Southern California. State Farm has moved in. Other big corporates have moved in. So they're trying to reach the newcomers, people who are moving into the community. And their message is, hey, Plano is booming, and we're really diverse, and we have a lot of economic opportunity. So you've got people who are in Southern California thinking, Texas? Am I going to move to Texas? What am I going to do in Texas? They just don't know. So this is a publication that is actually sent to management at Toyota, at State Farm, at some of these others, and distributed by the carton load to their employees. And they have articles like Crossing Generations, talking about the longevity of family there, intergenerational advantage, talking about their diversity, healthy living. Let's take a look at some of those. And we've got a second table of contents talking about some of the other things, the calendar of events and vital signs and some of that stuff. Let's look at some of those articles right now. Look at that picture, Crossing Generations. Here's a pub. There are families in there. There are people having a good time. Well, maybe there aren't kids because there's alcohol there, but that's a nice picture of a place that makes you feel a sense of community, a sense of belonging. The article continues, and in that same article, you've got the community vital signs talking about the stats of that particular community, things that people want to know if they're moving there, and pictures again tell a little story. You've got another picture talking about the intergenerational advantage. Look at the diversity. These are people, these aren't stock photos. These are actual people who live and work in Plano. The article continues. Again, we're showing diversity and more vital stats that people were interested in knowing about, the median household income. Plano is on fire, actually, right now, that whole Northeast Dallas area. Another photograph showing kids learning, diversity. It's not what some people think. It's very diverse. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in Texas. Again, a great visual about healthy living. Big pictures done well. And not only are they community oriented, but look at the economic vitality that's going on there. Legacy Texas Bank, Alliance Data, big businesses, big buildings. Plano has it going on. And it's a great place to work. They talk about Plano first. This is who we are. These are the things that we have going on. A calendar of events with pictures is also very enticing. Now we're loading up another city, Hollywood, California. Now this is a little bit unique because several years ago, Hollywood had 1 million square feet of commercial space under construction. And the CEO of the chamber, Laurent Gubler, he wanted to put a publication together that is more of an economic profile that could go over to the developers, and the developers could use that as a tool to attract tenants, which would be good for the developers and the owners of the buildings. It'd be great for the chamber, its new member prospects. The other challenge that the chamber has is the residents in Hollywood Hills are really not happy with all the development that's going on down in the valley area. So the chamber needed to connect with the residents and tell them about the progress. There's a reason why your homes have increased in value so much. Now, when I first moved to Southern California from Boston, it was 1991, and I went to Hollywood Boulevard. I got to tell you, it was a dump. There were drug addicts, there were prostitutes, there were runaways. It was really kind of a scary place. Well, fast forward to today, and it is a vibrant place full of tourists and great places to eat and great hotels and great shopping. It's actually a really, really cool and fun place. So the growth has been spectacular. Here's a table of contents from the Hollywood book. Hollywood's still making history. Hollywood's entertainment industry. Hollywood's Walk of Fame. The Hollywood Chamber owns the rights, the licensing rights to the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's a huge asset for them. So let's take a look at some of this stuff. Here's an article that's talking about history, that Hollywood is still a major player in the entertainment industry. This is Hollywood Boulevard from 1928. Now, take a look at the entertainment industry now. Look at what's going on. These are the entertainment industry is a major force in Hollywood today, and a big image of that. The Walk of Fame, that's an important component of Hollywood's economic vitality. And the CEO of this chamber never misses an opportunity to be in a photo with whoever's getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Dining, Hollywood is all about like entertainment and being out and nightlife and eating. Look at how it's presented. There's a lot of images, there's a lot of stuff going on. It shows vitality, it shows excitement, it shows vibrance. Now here's the economic profile. It's actually a separate publication that's inserted into the community guide so that those separate components can go out to the developers. But this entire book was the one that was sent out to the residents. The chamber is a positive force in the community. What a difference 20 years makes. Here's the messaging that, hey, we're growing and the growth has been good. Moving on, more statistics. These are stats that are shown in a different way, in a chart form, graphically. Another article about development. This is about the growth and all the new commercial real estate space that's available, that's attracting a lot of tech companies that want to be there, TV companies, very data heavy, very statistic heavy, and that's exactly what a lot of businesses are looking for, showing the government officials and of course again the business directory, giving members exposure. Switching gears to another chamber, this is the San Benito County Chamber of Commerce. It's in the Hollister area of central Northern California. This is a very visitor touristy area. So the chamber, while it's not a visitor's CVB, it is a visitor center. So they're reaching out to tourists that are coming in from all over the place. And their message is, hey, we're fantastic. We got a boatload of good stuff for you to do. We're an outdoor community. But yet still the CEO wants to get across the message that we're open for business, that we've got, it's a perfect place to grow your business. It's a perfect place to live. Let's take a look at some of those. You've got to have your little calendar of events, show what's going on, sprinkle pictures in there, always very fun. Growth across the board, the business community. In a visitor's guide, the chamber's talking about tourism, technology, housing, retail, and how everything remains strong in San Benito County. They're telling that story. Come and visit. Well, maybe you just might want to stay. And here's the good stuff that we have going on. It's a perfect landing spot. There's an airport and it's commerce friendly. We mean business. We got stuff, we got it going on. Now, even though we have these idyllic things and we have a quarter of a million people visit this place, You know, we still have opportunity here. Here are our vital signs. Here are the things that are going on, the distances from places, um, the economic vitality, the weather, a map, again, showcasing, or not showcasing, identifying where Hollister and San Benito County is relative to the Bay Area. A little bit of history. People are coming to visit the missions. That's one of the reasons why people go there. So, and again, she's talking about San Juan Bautista. That's a little town where this mission is. It bristles with tourism and retail activity. She's throwing that in. Julie Vieira is the CEO of this chamber. She wants to keep that positive message strong. A little article about dining and food. Great ad from a local bakery talking about the great outdoors. Here's where she starts talking to the tourists and showing them what they can do, where they can go. And a little message about relocation, because again, maybe if somebody's visiting, they might want to stay. So it's visitors guides can tell a story, and we need to move on to our slide number 3. Now let's get to Riverside. Riverside, California has so much going on. And they try to put as much of that information into a publication as possible. So this publication has multiple messages to multiple audiences, and they're able to pull it off. Riverside has a membership of about 1,100, and the revenue in this publication was able to support a large number of pages and information. But let's kind of go through it so you can see how pictures can tell a fantastic story. This chamber has done an awesome job using photographs to tell a story, as well as very, very great articles and content. Looking at their one of their first feature stories, Riverside Today. This is happening. Now, this is an aerial shot. That whole freeway system has completely been renovated and developed. All kinds of activity going on. Lots of big buildings that you can see here. And it's an evolving city. Elevating the arts. There's a little, in the bottom, 144 plus miles of bike trails. Well, that's a little did you know. Sprinkling did you knows throughout a publication really kind of grab people's attention. Here's another great image. You know that this is talking about education. You don't even need to know, you don't have to read the article. You can see education is an important component. March Air Force Base is a very important contributor to the local economy. And you could put a little picture of a military base, but look at the intensity in this guy's face and what he's doing. And they do that, they run these refueling operations out of March Air Force Base. A little bit more about the Air Force and March Air Force Base. And look at that, a fact check. That's a very contemporary little snippet. And it's a did you know, but done in a very contemporary way. Who isn't fact checking everybody these days? Here's another strong image, a local company, and look at what they're doing, technology, science. Their diversity in education. Look at what's going on here. This tells, just that picture tells a story. Here's another story about healthcare in Riverside. And a little different way of presenting the economic vital signs. Not as colorful, focusing a little bit more on the information, but still having those icons. Again, pulling those out and pushing them out through social media is a great way to get more usage and more life out of this. Now, like Hollywood, there's a visitor's guide in this, not an economic profile. So this visitor's guide is handed to the CVB, and the CVB distributes it to hotels and newcomers and heads in beds into the hotels. So again, telling a story about Riverside is hot. We got stuff to do. We've got things to see. Look at all the activities that we have going on. Check out our little downtown area. This is where a simple map works just as well as a cartographically accurate map. Now, how do you get it there? Here's the third question, delivering your message. Just like Stephen Covey always says, begin with the end in mind. Begin with your distribution plan in mind. Figure out what areas, where's it going to go, what mechanism is going to be used to get them out there. The last thing you want is to have thousands and thousands of these books sitting in your closet. You want to get them out of your closet, and you definitely don't want them in your conference room. You'll have a board member coming in one day who bought a full page ad, and they'll look at all those books lined up, and they'll take the board hat off and they'll put their advertiser hat on and say, why did I spend all that money on an ad that's not doing me any good? I could have just written the chamber a check. So you definitely want to have them out. You want to have them working for your members because you've promised your members to give them visibility. Take the books to every event, and we'll have a separate webinar on inexpensive and free low-cost distribution tips. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. Online options are very important. Begin with a digital visibility plan. Some chambers are further along than others in the digital visibility plan. The best place to start is a flip book. Again, we'll show you at the end how to generate those flip books at no charge. A lot of chambers put icons of the publications in their email signatures with a link to the online flip book. It's amazing how much visibility that generates. Posting little snippets to social media. And with a lot of these flipbook companies, you can enhance the publication online with video. Wouldn't that be a great thing to have somebody's ad as a video, or have somebody's testimonial about their business in a video? And you can do that in the online edition. So again, ask these three questions. What do we want to say? Who do we want to say it to? And how are we going to get it there? Ask your key stakeholders, ask your team members, keep noodling those questions around before you get started on a publication. Whether you're working with an outside publisher, whether you're working doing a publication in-house or some combination thereof, go through this process before you start putting a publication together. Now, what's wrong with having PDFs online? A lot of chambers do, and a lot of places have their PDFs online. Well, the first is that you don't know what kind of internet speed people have. So if it's a big book, it's a slow download. And we're really, really not willing to wait around these days. We'll just stop and go to something else. The other thing is it puts a file on your computer, on your device. And that file could have a virus, so it's a little kind of squeamish to be putting stuff on your computer that you don't know. The biggest thing is that a PDF is not visible to Google. So when Google goes out and searches publications and searches websites, they will not go through a PDF. So you could have fantastic information in there. It'll be completely invisible to Google, and you want that online visibility. Plus, you can't put enrichments in there like videos and that kind of stuff. So how do you make these free flip books? This is a service that we've been using for many, many years. We don't have any kind of economic attachment to these guys. We just think that they're good at what they do. They have a free service and they have a paid service. There are other ones out there too. These are the ones we're familiar with. Are you ready? www.issuu.com, issuu.com. They are continually improving, and you can have your free account. The paid account gives you more, and that's the place to go. So that concludes our presentation. Anyone have any questions?
Ed, we do have a question. How do you resist the desire to try to be something for everyone with your publication and really hone in on what's going to be most successful for your community?
It's a very good question. We're a convention and visitors bureau or a destination marketing organization has a very narrow focus, heads and beds, bringing tourists to the community. A chamber has a much broader mission and has to wear a lot more hats and has to make money. So there is a tendency, and I showed you Riverside, and Riverside covers a lot. They did it well in the way that it was structured, but that they were only able to do it that way because there was a good amount of advertising revenue in there, which allowed for it to happen. In a smaller chamber, you can touch on some of these things. It's important to have a feature story that talks about something that's of importance for that particular community over the next 18 to 24 months. So narrow down on that feature story, whether it's business related, whether it's growth related, whether it's a new CEO coming in, chamber vision, and then you can have a separate article that just kind of touches on some of these things, in a paragraph or two paragraphs that's in one story or two separate stories. That's a way of trying to touch on all those things. But the bigger question is asking those three questions. What do we really want to say? And whittling it down to, this is our message for this year, and this is who we're trying to reach. So do the hard work and say, no, doing this other stuff, that's taking us away from our point, which is, this is what we want to say, and this is who we want to say it to. I hope that helps.
We've got another one. This one's on distribution. How do you determine how many publications to print? Is there a formula based on chamber or community size?
That's a really, really good question. I do know some chambers that have printed 30,000 copies in a community that's a decent sized community, but their ad sales were only $50,000, and it doesn't jibe to have that many copies. First place I would start is what have the ad sales been historically, and kind of figure out, okay, if the sales are, let's see, how should I phrase this? If sales are modest, $40,000-$50,000 in sales, then the economics probably won't support more than like 10,000 copies. I think a minimum of 10,000 copies is important, and going over and above that, then you kind of really need to figure out, okay, how many are we going to be getting out in our distribution program, and have that distribution plan done ahead of time. So I would say rarely go fewer than 10,000 copies, because that's a number that makes sense for people that want to spend money. And over and above that, then you got to determine who you're trying to connect with and what your message is. If you're in a tourist market like a visitor's guide, you're naturally going to want to have more. If you're producing the publication yourself in-house, then there are ways to manage the cost of printing. It's just printing 10,000 copies or 20,000 copies, that sounds like a lot, but there are ways that you can reduce the cost by reducing the weight of the paper, changing the binding to make it what's called saddle stitched with a staple rather than perfect bound, which has glued binding. So there are ways to manage that. If you're working with a turnkey publisher, talk to them. Say, look, we're a visitor's market and we need 20,000 copies. How can we make that work? Be careful, because they might say, well, we got to give up your royalty. Start having a dialogue about it. But the minimum number, I would say, would be about 10,000 copies.
Okay, we've got another one. Our publication has been dwindling in support for some time. How do we convince, if we want to make it over, how do we convince advertisers to come back?
So I think the first thing to do would be to ask. Call the advertisers, do a little poll, put a little survey together, not a very big survey, but just call them and ask that question and say, we're looking at producing this publication again, and we're very appreciative that you've been an advertiser with us in the past. What would make this publication more valuable for you? Is there something it's lacking? Is there something that can be done better? What can we do to make this more valuable for you? Start there with the people that are writing the check. And then I would suggest doing a survey of the members, or even beyond the members. If your database has email addresses for people that are outside of the chamber, that are non-members, push a survey out to all of them, asking just a handful of questions. One of them, the question that I think is really important, is how do you prefer to get information, to read this kind of information? In print and digital, or digital only? Ask questions about, are you in between 20 and 40 years old? Are you between 40 and 60 years old? Just splitting the demographic among those two will also help you kind of understand who your reader is. And asking the advertisers and the members, who should we be talking to? Who should we be reaching with this publication? You know, those 3 or 4 questions will give you a lot of insight about how you can improve the publication, how you can get it back on track. So that gets back to the 3 questions. What do we want to say? Who do we want to say it to? And how is it going to get there? I hope that helps.
I believe that's all of the questions. Last call for questions.
Well, those were very, very good questions.
Okay, I believe that's it for questions.
Terrific. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this webinar. We're Chamber Marketing Partners. We're a project management company that helps chambers with their manage their in-house publications, and we're also a full-fledged publishing company as well, providing all the services available to publishers, publishing services, and project management service. Keep an eye out for additional webinars and check us out at chambermarketingpartners.com. Thanks very much for attending.